Hello friends, Reckless here. Today we're going to be going over Lor-Meta's meta report. We're going to be going over Archtype Playrates, what decks are best for ladder grinding, which ones have the highest power score, and then we're going to look over some deck codes from each of the big archetypes that had a very high win rate. Link to the article and deck codes are in the description. Let's start with archetypes. Highest play rate is Pirate Aggro, 9.2%. Massive increase from last week, because last week the patch nerfs and buffs came out. Darkness, also a winner from the buffs, up to 7%. AKSHAN KEIMERDINGER didn't really exist before, up to 6.2. This is because What Am I brewed this up, and it's done really well. EZREAL KENNEN is also back in force because Mark of the Storm got a big buff. VIEGO EVELYNN, 2.8%. This is mostly based off of the hate spike buff, in my opinion anyways. JAYCE keeps hanging around, it's never leaving us. TRYNADMERE, mostly I think this is because it beats up on pirates. AKSHAN also has a good win rate against pirates. Ramper Soul at 2.2%, the stupid Targon's Peak bullshit. This has a good matchup against a lot of the control decks in the meta, so it's kind of preying on those. And lastly, Mono Kaisa has plummeted, lost 16% of its share. That's like 20%, but 80% of its value, just poof. Down to 2.2%, but it's still sticking around, partially because it's very good against AKSHAN Kaisa. Matchup table is super complicated. If you want to look into it and analyze it, I'd recommend just going over to yourself. There's a little too much for me to go over here. Now we have the archetype power ranking, and power score is basically a deck score based off of its win rate against all the participants in the metagame, weighed by how often they show up. Very useful for selecting decks for ladder climbing, and you can have multiple decks with 100 power score. Pirate Aggro is number 1 at 100, AKSHAN Kaisa is at 98, Mono Kaisa is at 82, and that's because it has a good matchup against AKSHAN Kaisa, but also has good enough matchups against everything else. VIEGO EVELYNN, I don't really know its matchup spread. JAYCE, also not really sure exactly what it's beating up on. TRYNADMERE, no, it beats up on pirates, and then there's kind of a big jump down to easy KENNEN. And lastly, these I wouldn't necessarily touch. If you want to, go for it, but it seems you have much better choices up here. And the meta score is just a deck's power score based off of its matchups against everything in the top part of the meta. Now let's get into the deck code review. I mostly select deck codes based off of having a high win rate, but I try to balance that with number of matches played. And here we have the Pirates deck. Basically they all look relatively the same, but the most winningest list had 2 Aya Nagaburos, 2 Make It Rains, and just 3 of everything else. Riptide Sermon is incredibly powerful, really strong card. Darkness is looking like Darkness, I guess. I don't really play Darkness. I don't really study the lists too much, mostly because they also shift a lot based off player preference, what they want to target. And for best of 3, they're going to look really different compared to best of 1. So I think probably the neatest thing is Transposition as a 2-of. Lets them bounce a value unit and replay it. Saving it's really good for the champions in the deck. 1 Runation, 2 Vengeance. It's pretty standard, probably. Here we have What Am I's AKSHAN Kaisa deck. And this is basically a slower, more mid-range version of Kaisa, where it's more focused on good Void Abominations and getting there. So that's why it has 2 Perseveriums and 3 AKSHANs. It's actually capable of playing the longer game as opposed to a faster game, which is what Mono Kaisa does. My only criticism with the deck is I think not playing 3 Petricide Broadwing is kinda sussy, but that's about it. And here we have Ionia, not annoying to play against goodness. Easy KENNEN. This is basically the old like KENNEN Ari deck minus Ari. We're playing mostly the same cards, all these defensive elements. Honestly, not a lot has changed between the actual deck list of Ari KENNEN and KENNEN. If you just swap out KENNEN and EZREAL, I guess we're not playing like Blade Twirler and some spell to push it over, either a Might or a Absolver or Splash and Go Hard. But it's pretty much structurally the same. This deck's actually very powerful. I've just heard it has issues where if it doesn't draw the right parts of the deck, it kind of looks like a pile of poo-poo. Here we have VIEGO EVELYNN. This was the highest win rate list I could find. I think it was number 4 though in play rate. And I think the reason it probably did so well is because it has a lot of life gain in it compared to other EVELYNN VIEGO lists because of Dragon, Collector, and 2 main deck Withering Whales. So this probably has a very good Pirates matchup. Hate Spike is honestly, like, this card really strong at 1 mana, and it's kind of funny that, honestly, in my opinion, I think this card is what made this archetype viable. And that's kind of cool, except I hate these champions and I hate playing against them, but, you know, other people are enjoying them, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And as always, JAYCE HEIMERDINGER, it's just never going away. It seems like it'll always be in top 10. Not a whole lot to say here. I don't play JAYCE Heimer. It seems there's a lot of differences between all the lists. I don't really know what the card choices do. Like, I don't know why some people are playing Adaptatrons and others aren't. And honestly, nothing too interesting here, really. So, moving on. TRUNDLE, TRYNADMERE, good old Feel the Rush. Yeah, Deep Lighted Ravine. Nerf didn't do anything, really, in regards to this deck's playability. 2 Avalanches, 3 Ravines, 2 Whales. Pretty standard, right? They aren't, like, going mega hardcore trying to beat aggro, but they've got a lot, for sure. 1 Runation, like, this list is pretty similar. I think, like, maybe the only weird thing is it has 2 She Who Wanders. That's, like, kind of a little different than normal, I'd say. It's not, like, stock or staple, at least in my experience. I've played this a bit back in the day. But yeah, 3 If That Wins. Good card. Good card. I think EZREAL is doing well right now because it has a good matchup against Pirates, because it actually has reasonable blockers and can turn the corner very quickly. So it's kind of like, you know how Scouts will beat up on some aggro decks because it's just slightly bigger? I think the same thing is happening here. Also, Rite of Passage, you know, very good card. I don't think the Zilean buff, changing his champion spell, is really what caused this. It's just a micro nerf, micro buff, but hey, value's value. Here we have another pile of joy and fun to play against, Targon's Peak. You know, surprisingly, this deck doesn't actually have the greatest matchup versus Pirates. Apparently, it's only 40% win rate. But, you know, if your opponent plays a turn 4 Peak and turn 5 She Who Wanders, then it blows up your whole board and hand, you're still gonna get there. That didn't happen to me earlier today. No. But this deck exists because it beats up on control decks. It just goes bigger than them. They have a hard time interacting with this stupid card. And then these dumb bombs kill them. And lastly, we have Mono Kaisa. Still seeing play, still relevant because it has a good matchup against AKSHAN Kaisa. And honestly, there's not a whole lot I can say about the list. It looks a little clunky, but yeah, it is what it is. I do like 3 Purchase Type Broadwings. So in conclusion, this is actually kind of an interesting metagame because we have all the we have aggro and we have control present, and we have different decks vying for different other decks, right? Like we even have Targon's Peak that's just strictly trying to grief on control decks. So I think there's a lot of interesting things going on in the meta right now. And if you enjoy this content, again, click that like button. It helps push us to other people who might enjoy the content. And if you want more Runeterra goodness, click the subscribe button. See you next time.